So a lot of you have requested that I share some sample letters of explanation for spousal sponsorship for Canada. And we need letters of explanation. Just how a marriage certificate is the official way of saying that I love my partner, a letter of explanation is the official way of saying that, come on, please trust me, I really do love my partner. So in this video, I'll share with you every letter of explanation and family reference letter that I provided when I sponsored my wife. We'll cover the reason I chose to write that letter, the details that I provided, the format that I used, how I labeled each letter, and where I uploaded it in the online portal. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to cover every possible scenario, but the 3 or 4 cases that we'll cover should give you a general idea about how to draft these letters. And all these letters that we'll cover are linked in the description below as samples for you to download or share with your friends. Also, quick update for those who have been following our sponsorship journey so far. My wife received her passport request on April 12th, 2022. Then she sent the passport along with the other documents in a package to VFS on April 18th, 2022. Basically, she had a courier service pick it up. Then the courier service delivered it back with the stamped passport and the COPR document for my wife on May 2nd, 2022. By the way, I cover our complete sponsorship timeline and instructions on how to submit your passport after you receive the request in this video that should be showing up on the cards here and linked below. So check that video out to learn all about that. Alright, so let's begin. Alright, so first up is sponsors visits. So before we begin, let me give you a little background about why I chose to write this letter. I was in the US February 2020. My wife was in India when we were formally introduced to each other online. My sister created a WhatsApp group and she added both of us in that group. Our families already knew each other from before, so this was a typical arranged marriage setting. So after being formally introduced, we started to get to know each other through Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, video calls. How are you? I have MBA, Kundli match. I love Stranger Things. I love Friends, Kundli match. Music, cooking, fitness freak, Kundli match. You're kind and beautiful. You're funny and handsome, Kundli match. And we sealed the deal. So we kept this up for 3 months and then we knew that we were right for each other. Our families had already approved of us, and I would have traveled to India to initiate some kind of formal ceremony, but it was peak COVID season and all flights were banned. But we were confident enough, so we set a date for our marriage. Then in December 2020, I traveled to India to marry my wife. So this visit was for the purpose of marriage. We got married. We stayed in India at my residence for 7 months. Then I moved to Canada on July 12th, 2021 to continue my employment. I sent in my sponsorship application October 26, 2021. So between moving to Canada and sending the application, I was living in Canada and my wife was in India. And in this time frame, I did not visit my wife. So I felt that I should organize all this information in a clear and detailed manner in a letter of explanation so that the immigration officer has no confusion about our case. Alright, so let me show you that letter next. Alright, so let me first take you to the document checklist. This document has a list of all the forms and documents that you are required to submit as part of your spousal sponsorship application. And this document also has to be submitted along with the rest of your documents and forms. Alright, so if you're looking for a general overview of this document checklist, where to download it from, how to fill this out, and where to submit, then I have a dedicated video that should be showing up on the cards here and linked below. It should give you a general understanding of this document checklist. Alright, so if you scroll down to page 7, at the bottom, you will see section 7 in the document checklist, which is the proof of relationship to sponsor. Now, in this section 7, in question A, they ask, are you and your spouse currently living together? Alright, so I obviously would check no, because at the time I was not living with my wife, and that's why I had to provide proof of contact, the WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram that I talked about. But they also ask for proof of sponsors' visits. And they clearly state that if your sponsor did not visit you, make sure you provide an explanation in your 5532 form, part C, question 4. So basically, when my wife fills out the 5532 or her representative or me fills on behalf of her, then in this question 4 of the form 5532, you can provide explanation as to why not. Now, I did not visit my wife before marriage and I did not visit after I moved back to Canada. I only visited for the purpose of marriage, but I did not feel comfortable using only that as the proof of my visit. And that's why I chose to write this letter. You can choose different according to your case. Right? This is the relationship form 5532 and this is section 4, and this is where you will provide explanation. But because the space is small, you may not be able to provide complete explanation here, or you may not be able to share important details. Obviously, that was the case for me, and that's why I chose to write a letter of explanation with as much details as I could provide. Alright, so let's look at that letter next. So this is the letter of explanation template that I created for you guys, and I've linked this in the description below. So look for letter of explanation templates, and all my letter of explanations are included here. Alright, so you don't have to watch me any longer. You can just click the link in the description and study the templates, and accordingly you can draft your letters. But I'm going to show this to you anyway. So this is the letter of explanation that I drafted for sponsors visit section, and there is no specific format that I could find online, so I just went with the format that I knew. This is completely my own. Feel free to change it according to what you know, but I would suggest keep it formal because it's the letter to the immigration officer. So I just wrote the date on which I wrote the letter, subject, sponsor name, applicant type, family class, spouse sponsorship, because it was an outlined application. Then I also have a section uploaded as. Basically, this is the way I named or labeled that document just to make it easier for the officer to locate it. All right. Now I'm not going to read through the entire letter. I already explained this to you, but I do want to point out something. So in the introduction, I've written, I, Suyash Gautam, am sponsoring my wife, Apurva Mishra, for permanent residence of Canada. I'm writing this letter to provide additional details about the proof of sponsors visits item required under section 7A of the document checklist 5533. So this is just to give a context to the officer about what this letter of explanation is for. Alright, it makes it easy for them. Then here I explain everything that I explained to you, introduced online, COVID, not visiting, then finally visiting, marrying, and coming back to Canada and all that stuff. And here at the bottom I put my name. In address, I provided the sponsor's address or my address in Canada, the same address I used in Form 1344, just to be consistent. My phone, the Canadian phone number for the sponsor, which I've also listed in the application, and my email, which is also the email that I've listed in the application because I acted as my wife's representative. Alright, so this is the letter that I submitted. Obviously, it worked for us, but tweak it according to your application and you should be good. Alright. So let's look at the next one. Alright, so next up is the letter of explanation I provided for not having financial documents from CRA or the Canadian Revenue Agency. So if I can take you back to the document checklist, in part B, supporting documents required, if you look at the supporting documents for sponsor, if you scroll down to section 5, there's an employment or source of income section. It says here, if you're working in Canada, provide an original letter from your employer stating your period of employment and salary and regular hours, but you also have to provide one of these documents issued by the CRA or the Canadian Revenue Agency, either your most recent notice of assessment or your proof of income statement. Right, and you can provide one of these or both. So at the time of sponsoring my wife, I'd been working for my Canadian employer for over 5 months, but I had not done my taxes yet. I would do them in 2022 around April, March, but I did not have the CRA documents because you only get them when you file the taxes. At least that's the way I know it. If there's anything different, you can let me know in the comments below. But I did not have the CRA documents. And it says here that if you cannot provide the notice of assessment or a proof of income statement, basically if you cannot provide CRA documents, then you must provide an explanation on a separate sheet of paper. And that's why I provided a letter of explanation accompanied by relevant supporting financial document to show that you can support the person. So that's why I chose to write this letter, right? So this is the letter for sponsors financial documents from CRA, or I should say for not providing documents, but it's pretty clear in the letter. Again, the format is the same: date, subject, not providing financial documents from CRA, sponsor name, application type, and uploaded as. You already know what this means. Addressed it to the immigration officer and just provided some context in the intro here. So I, Suyash Gautam, sponsoring my wife Apurva Mishra for permanent residence of Canada. I am writing this letter to provide justification for not providing CRA documents that are required to show financial support as mentioned in part B, section 5 of the document checklist 5533. Again, providing context to the officer to make his job easier. Then I described everything that I described to you, and I also wrote, instead, to show the ability to support my wife once she moves to Canada, I am providing the following documents. Meaning, I don't have CRA documents, but I can provide other financial support documents, which include 5 months of salary slips from my Canadian employer, my current bank balance in my Canadian bank account, employment letter from current employer, and proof of continued employment over the past 5 years. Okay, so you should focus on providing these 3 documents with top priority. I just provided the 4th kind of document just to be extra cautious. Okay, you don't really have to provide that. If you can, it's good. Then I just provided my name, address, phone, email, just like we saw before, and that was the letter. All right, so let's move on to the next one. All right, so next up is letter of explanation for application resubmission. Just a little background. The first time I submitted my wife's application was August 15, 2021 using the new online portal, but that application was rejected. Reason being, 1344 or the sponsorship agreement form was not signed. And the reason we did not sign that form is not because we were careless, but because the form clearly told us not to. When you hit validate on 1344, the form gives you a message that clearly tells you that if you are doing the application online, you don't need to print and sign. And we believed it, but we were wrong because IRCC rejected our application and asked me in the rejection letter to sign the 1344, meaning both the sponsor and principal applicant should hand sign it, wet ink, alright? So I had to fix the mistake and resubmit the application, and I've actually documented the process and made a video about it. It should be showing up on the cards here and linked below. So definitely check that out. And let me quickly take you to a help center page on the official CIC website, which talks about resubmission. So this is the page that I'm talking about. My application was returned because something was missing. It's a help center page and it's an official CIC page, right? And there are instructions on some additional documents that you should provide when you're resubmitting. So if you scroll down here, it says add any document or information that was missing the first time and include the letter and checklist we sent you. So this is the rejection letter that they must have sent you when they rejected your application, and the checklist is the document checklist that they're asking you to provide. All right. Then they also ask you to write a letter that explains why you are changing or updating your information or why you can't get the document we requested. So when you're resubmitting your package, if you've provided all the necessary documents, uploaded the payment receipt, you've fixed the mistake, you've uploaded all the forms, then I don't think you really need to provide this letter of explanation. Just the first part should be enough. But just to be safe, I provided a letter of explanation clearly stating why my first application was rejected and how I fixed it, just to make it easier for the officer to understand my case. So this is completely your choice, but I did that, so I'm going to show that to you anyway. So if I take you back to our template, this is the application resubmission letter that I wrote. So the format is pretty much the same. Labeling is pretty much the same, but I just wrote, I am sponsoring my wife Apurva Mishra for permanent residence of Canada. I'm writing this letter of explanation in concern with her spousal sponsorship application for permanent residence under family class. The same details that was submitted on August 15th, 2021. So this is the first submission that I'm talking about. The application was returned due to missing signature in the form 1344, and here I explain how I fixed that mistake and now I'm resubmitting the application. All right, so that's pretty much it, and all the details are included in the template. So click the link in the description box, you know where to look for, and you should have this letter. All right. So let's look at the next one. So this one is not really a letter of explanation, but a family reference letter that I provided. And I wanted to include this in the video because a lot of you have requested that. So if I can take you back to the document checklist, section 7, proof of relationship to sponsor. Once you answer these questions A to D, depending on how you answer them and this condition, you may or may not be required to provide documents for section 7E. My guess is most people will be required to provide these documents. So in this section 7E, if you look at this box, other proof that your relationship is recognized by your friends and or family, letters from friends, family, social media information showing a public relationship. So obviously you can provide a letter from family or friends to solidify your case, and that is exactly what I did. So before I share that letter with you, quick note, I've made a video discussing all the supporting documents that we submitted for our spousal sponsorship application. Basically all the documents mentioned in the document checklist that were specific to us, I share those documents in that video. I explain how I procured my documents, how I prepared them for upload, where I uploaded them in the online portal, under what category, and how I labeled them. I think it's going to be a really useful video to watch, so definitely check that out. It should be showing up on the cards here and it's linked in the description below. Alright, so remember how I told you in the beginning that my sister was the one who introduced me and my wife? She was my cousin and she was the best person to write the family reference letter to solidify our case. So I asked her to write a letter explaining how she was related to me, how she knew the principal applicant or my wife from before, how she introduced us, how she attended each and every event of the wedding, and to attest to the fact that the wedding indeed was true and legal. And then she provided her credentials and attached a copy of her passport to validate her identity. So all that, she put that in a letter, and I've attached that letter in the sample that I've shared with you in the description box. So don't forget to check that out. All right. We received the passport request. So basically she has, I submitted my wife's spousal sponsor or missing forms. You don't want to have but the misleading instructions tell you not to sign a particular form when you hit validate. But so before I begin, let me give you a little bit of and what to do with and the instructions for passport request. By the way,